Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and today I'm talking with Sam Pazuki. He is the new Managing Director and CEO of Matador Mining. ASX code is MZZ. And for those of you that don't know, Matador Mining have got an extensive land position up in Newfoundland, part of Canada, in case you've never heard of it, because I think that many Australians don't know Newfoundland. And I've asked Sam to come on today to just give us a brief overview of why he's decided to join Matador as their MD and CEO. Only joined on the 1st of May, so it's brand new. And let's hope he's got his head around everything because it's a very exciting story. Sam, great to see you. Thanks for joining me on Small Caps.
Yeah, likewise, Kerry. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and speak to you today and discuss what I think is an exciting story.
Well, you must think it's exciting because you just joined as MD and CEO. First up, let's just give a bit of your background so that my community understands who you are and why you decided to join Matador.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a common question that I've been getting since my announcement first went out a few months ago. I had spent a decade with Oceana Gold. It's a multinational gold producer, 4 operations around the world, also dual listed, TSX, ASX. And so I spent my last decade working with them and sort of growing with the organization, which has seen significant growth over the last several years. So a big part of that. I was SVP of Strategy, M&A, and Investor Relations. So the relationships I have with the investment community is quite extensive and global. And so Oceana was a great company and has a very promising future. But when I got a phone call last September, basically Canadian fall, from a headhunter saying that Matador is looking for a CEO, that definitely piqued my interest. My previous boss at Oceana Gold, Mick Wilkes, was on the board. And so I knew about Matador because that's where he went after he left Oceana. And I knew that they were exploring in Newfoundland, which is close to home, but it's also an exciting place to be right now in the gold industry. And I would dare to say that the hottest gold rush in the world right now is in Newfoundland. So to potentially work for a company and lead the company in one of the most exciting jurisdictions right now on the planet for gold was certainly an opportunity that I wanted to explore. And Kerry, as I went through that process with the board, getting to know Ian Murray, who I didn't know before, but knew by reputation with the success that he and Justin Osborne, also on the board, have had with Gold Road. And then working with Nikki Atchett-Bell, who I've known for a decade. She was an investor in Oceana Gold 10 years ago when I first met her. I saw that this was a legitimate team. And looking at the project, I saw that it was a legitimate project. So all the stars were aligned. And again, it's a common question that I've been getting. Why would you leave your good gig at Oceana to come here in the world of junior exploration? I think the opportunity is great. And I'm really excited to really create something from the ground up.
That's a really good overview, and I appreciate that, Sam, as my audience will as well. One of the things you said was that Newfoundland is like it's underexplored. It's a new jurisdiction. Many of my audience based here in Australia, or at least in the Southern Hemisphere, will probably go, "Where is Newfoundland?" But do you think that why is it so underexplored? Why hasn't there? Because you look at gold and gold mining, globally, and you think there's nowhere new to explore. But you're saying that this area, Newfoundland, hasn't really been explored. What's happening up there?
Yeah, that's right, Kerry. I mean, Newfoundland is truly the final frontier in the gold mining industry in terms of top-tier jurisdictions that hosts multi-million ounces of gold along at least two major gold structures, that has a supportive government who's already permitted the newest gold mine with Marathon Gold, very strong stakeholders, significant amount of skilled workers from Newfoundland, a lot of them are actually outside of Newfoundland because that's where the opportunities are. But as more investment comes onto the island, they'll have that ability to come back to the province. And so infrastructure-wise, it's a perfect setting. And the Fraser's Institute had ranked Newfoundland as number 11 in terms of top mining jurisdictions. And from my perspective, Newfoundland should be in the top 3, just because of everything I've mentioned. And the opportunity, which again, we have, and anyone interested in investing in Newfoundland and investing in Matador specifically, the opportunity that they have is that there has been very little activity on the island exploring for gold. And it was really in the 80s when existing land or rights holders were told that they needed to show some level of activity, that they then began to start optioning the land that they had. So the land goes back many decades. And so they were forced in a situation to option land to prospectors. And then there was some activity for gold prospecting on the island. Again, it was very little. There wasn't a lot of activity until really about 5 years ago.
Oh, really? Are you serious, Sam? 5 years ago, there wasn't very much done, because that's like 2017.
Absolutely, it's a little strange to think about that. Here's a jurisdiction in Canada, a great place to be from a resource perspective, and there really hasn't been much activity in gold exploration or gold mining of any sort on the island. In 2016, there was less than 70,000 meters of drilling looking for gold specifically. In 2021, I believe the number was about 400,000 meters of drilling. So, I mean, again, the level of activity and the amount of investment going into the island has grown exponentially. And so you've got some big investors such as Eric Sprott, who I think his nickname...
We love Eric. We love Eric down here.
No, absolutely. I think his nickname is Mr. Newfoundland right now, just because he has exposure to many different companies on the island. And then Pierre Lassonde is also heavily invested in companies that are exploring for gold in Newfoundland. So it's early days. I mean, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg with Marathon Gold. There's a number of companies on the island. We're only one of 4 companies that has a resource. So we have a good base already.
Okay, only one of four. Let me just repeat that, with a resource on the island. What is that resource? Where is it? Let's talk about what Matador have got their hands on the island.
Yeah, so our existing resource is circa 840,000 ounces at 2 grams. And I think 98% of that is shallow, so it's open pittable across three main pits. So it's from an open pit perspective, it's one of the highest grade open pit resources anywhere today in the world.
And if I could just stop you there for 1 second, Sam, just to explain to people that if you've got an open pit resource, it means that it's almost like a quarry operation, isn't it? You don't have to have lots of infrastructure, et cetera, if you're going underground. So ultimately, if you've got a high grade, like 2 grams per ton is a good grade, and then you don't need to have a lot of capital infrastructure to take that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. You don't, when it's shallow, you don't need to move a lot of dirt to access the gold. As you said, I mean, quarry is a good example. I mean, you're moving a lot of material in a quarry mine, and there's certainly a lot of operations around the world that have half the grade we do. And the running joke is that it's a quarry mine with a bit of gold. So the expression is great as king. I prefer to say great as queen because I've got 2 daughters, and I think that's it's really the name of the game. It's to have as much grade as you can, especially these days when costs are higher than they used to be. Yeah. Obviously, the gold price is higher than it used to be as well, but you really have to go after things that are shallow and high grade. But as you get deeper, obviously, the grade becomes more important. And so your expectation as you get deeper with the deposit is to have a much higher grade to make it economic.
But you've got 2 tenement packages on this structure, haven't you? So that 840,000 ounces, is that on the Cape Ray shear?
Yes. So the resource we have is predominantly in Central, which is 500,000 ounces. And in Window Glass Hill, which currently is 250,000 ounces. There's a little bit on a prospect called Big Pond and another one called Isle of Moore, just very little, but there's been very little drilling around those specific targets. And that's what the team had been drilling in the last 12 months or so. It's drilling at Window Glass Hill. There was extensions to that called the Window Glass Hill Granite, drilling around Big Pond. And then there were several targets in between that formed part of the drilling last year into the winter. So the company just completed its first winter drill program. It was a modest program, which The team had planned 3,000 to 4,000 meters just to see if it was doable in the winter. And in Canada, it's a real winter. It's not that the Australians refer to as winter. It's real winter with real snow and some frigid temperatures.
So how do you do a winter drill program when it's like -30 and snow and ice?
With a number of Canada Goose jackets. I guess they call them beanies in Australia, but they call them toques in Canada. So part of my job is to educate the Australians on what the different appropriate winter gear is and what it should be called. So yeah, but jokes aside, I mean it is harsher weather conditions. But the team managed to drill 6,000 meters.
Oh wow!
And what they found was that it actually was a lot more efficient to drill during winter. Because the equipment would be on tracks and would go over snow. So you had snow cover and you weren't disturbing the ground. So you could move rigs around a lot more efficiently than in the summer where you're making more of a surface impact to the ground. And so that's something that we've proven that we can do. And I'm keen coming into Matador to do a lot more drilling through the next winter.
Is there a time when you can't do any drilling? Is there a time when it's like -50 degrees and the toques don't even help?
It doesn't get that cold that I'm aware of anyways in Newfoundland. But certainly other parts of Canada get cold. I wouldn't want to be in the Arctic.
No, quite. But this Cape Ray shear zone there's a continuous strike. It's quite big, isn't it? Now, am I correct in saying it's about 120 kilometers in strike length? Is that correct?
That's absolutely right, Carrie. It's 120 kilometers of continuous strike on a major gold-bearing structure, which already hosts multi-millions of ounces. It hosts our 840,000 ounces, and just up the road, it's not just up the road, but along the same structure is Marathon Gold, and they currently have a resource of 4.8 million ounces and growing. They continue to make new discoveries. They've got a new one, which they've been focused on and drilling that out. So I believe that resource will continue to grow. And here we are with 120 kilometers of continuous strike on the same structure as Marathon Gold. And we've only drilled, or there's been drilling, whether it's us or predecessor company, only drilled 12% of that 120 kilometer strike length. Just imagine where you are today, Carrie, and think about where 120 kilometers is from where you are today. For me in Toronto, it's Niagara Falls. So we've got a stretch of land from Toronto to Niagara Falls in which we know it hosts gold for us to go and explore.
So what are you going to be doing along that structure? Talk to us about how you systematically go about, because that's a big area that you've got. First of all, how do you do it? How do you fund it? What's it look like for you? I know you've only been there for just over a week, but no, it's an exciting opportunity to have. It's an exciting opportunity for shareholders, and having the exposure to this tenement package is a unique opportunity. For us, one of the things that really attracted me to Matador, again, there was a number of different reasons why I wanted to come to Matador and really build on the foundation that Ian and the team had built. And one of these things that really attracted me was the systematic approach to exploration. So I'm an engineer, that's my background, and I'm learning a lot more about geology and approach to geology. At OceanaGold, there's quite a bit of geological prospectivity, and then the company did quite a bit of drilling. I'd say, did it in the way that Australians do it. In Canada, I'm learning that there are some differences, some different approaches and methodologies to exploration. And I think this is one of the opportunities in Newfoundland, is that we've adopted almost a hybrid approach, between an Australian exploration approach and a Canadian approach. And we do things properly. So the team have done a 40-kilometer magnetic survey to see, and apparently it's one of the highest resolutions ever, one of the most comprehensive surveys ever done on the island. And it defined a number of structures. And then from there, they look at other data and do some field reconnaissance work. They do power logging. In Australia, I think they use air core drilling.
So they do power auging in what we've done is power auging with handhelds. They've also invented a wiki drill where they've mounted one of the augers to an ATV, which is pretty neat, to basically sample through the till, get to the basement, pull out some rock, and then sample that from a geochemical perspective to see if there is gold in the system and get a better understanding of the structures. And then once they've gone through that, they identify specific targets in which to drill. So I believe the approach used in Canada is there is smoke and go drill. So they don't necessarily go through that rigor to identify specific areas to drill.
Right.
And in some ways, it's not a very good use of shareholder capital. It's a fine way to drill. So I love that approach, and I will continue to encourage the team to go through that approach as quickly, as safely as possible. But I've been considered to be very shareholder friendly, and I want to ensure that every dollar we're spending is value add.
I love that. Yep, that's really good. There's a lot of work to be done, but I understand that there's a lot of brownfields work being done, but also that you might be looking at potentially bigger opportunities in greenfields. So I really want to find out what that strategy is moving forward and why.
Yeah, Carrie, I mean, I'm super excited about the prospectivity of the tenement package that we have. I mean, when I went through this process with the board, the recruitment process, what really excited me was that the land package. Looked at the 120 kilometers of strike. We've got a project called Hermitage, which seems very interesting. It's not on the same trend. It's on a different structure, which is the same structure as Newfoundland gold, which is getting some pretty big splashy drill intercepts. And so to me, as I learned more and more about the opportunity that we had, again, being a sponge, learning about what we've done, what the strategy has been, what the strategy was basically a little while ago, to me, this felt a lot like Gold Road. I've gotten to know Ian quite well over the last few months and learned more about sort of how Gold Road became Gold Road. And I do feel that we're at a similar junction as they were, where a lot of the exploration efforts was to drill the brownfield, I call it brownfields target, an existing resource. And the geos keep going back to the same resource to incrementally grow it. Right. We could do that too. And that's a strategy, is to incrementally grow those ounces by drilling around the existing resource. And we've had success doing it in the last 12 months or so. But that's not going to move the dial. I think we're all here in exploration to really see what the potential is of this belt and look for multi-million ounce deposits. So I would, just like Gold Road, they made the decision to go out and test the tenement package they had in Western Australia. We're at the same junction where, I've spoken to Ian, I've spoken to the board, and we've made a decision that we need to pivot the strategy just like Gold Road did and look for additional, basically go and explore additional targets along the belt. So in some ways, in the Australian context, I view this as Gold Road 2.0. In the Canadian analogy, what I'd like to do is replicate what Marathon Gold has, is to replicate their Valentine Lake project.
Wow. Okay. So does that mean, how do you, to go from brownfields to greenfields, do you continue doing the work that you're doing at Cape Ray and increasing that resource? In other words, do you have one team there and another team doing greenfields, or are you doing it 100% pivot over to greenfields?
Yeah, so we're working up the final plans as we speak, and we'll have some definitive plans that we can go to the market with by the end of this month. But what I can share with you is that we're not abandoning the brownfield strategy. There are still some targets in the brownfields area around the existing resource that's worth follow-up with some drilling. So the intention is to do some drilling next month, over the next couple of weeks, actually, to test out some of those brownfield targets, but not the amount of drilling that was originally planned before I joined the company. So I prefer to allocate the resources and the funding to identify specific targets in the greenfields area for us to be able to drill in a few months. And to the team's credit, again, they saw the structures that were in the magnetic survey. And one of the things I've learned from our structural geos is that anywhere there's a bend is a good place to look for gold. Anywhere there's multiple structures or cross-cutting structures.
Sorry to interrupt you, Sam. you just said something interesting. Anywhere where there's a bend is a good place to look for gold. Why?
It's so you've got a continuity of a structure, and it doesn't provide necessarily an outlet for the fluids to come up, dating back years ago when the magma was seeping up. So every time you have a structure, it's the analogy I've been told from the geos, it's like a highway. So the highway will keep going straight, and all the cars will continue to go straight until they have the exits to be able to get off. So just like the fluids, the gold-bearing fluids, once you have a bend in the structure, it's an opportunity for it to actually escape and come up closer to surface. And every time you've got multiple structure or cross-cutting structures, again, these are avenues in which the gold-bearing fluids can come up through those cracks. So that's from a structural perspective, lends itself well to identifying places, specific areas in those structural bends or those cross-cutting structures to go and explore or drill for gold.
Sam, Newfoundland, we've talked lots about gold and what you're doing in the brownfields and the greenfields. Is there anything else on your tenements? And I'm not going to go down the lithium. I'm not going to do that. But is there any copper or is it pure gold? I'm just curious. Is it purely a gold play here?
There are other minerals on the island. I believe there is lithium. I do believe there's VMS systems, and that's what's been mined in Newfoundland, and that's what's currently being mined. There are definitely pathfinder elements that we see, but not, I'd say, an economic amount of the minerals you mentioned, copper included. But that's not to say that these things don't exist on the island. They've just never been explored for porphyry systems, for example. That's never been the focus. It's looking for the VMS structures. Again, one of the companies has tagged into some lithium. It's early days for them, and then other players are focused on gold. We've got a bit of silver as well, and then there's oil that, and more recently, the government has approved an offshore oil field, production field. So when do you see that in the world? A new offshore oil production field being permitted by a government.
So,
but
go ahead.
Yeah. But Carrie, I mean, for us, again, it's not to say these things don't exist on our tenement package, and maybe we'll get lucky, I guess, to potentially tag into something that isn't gold. That's more exciting, I guess, for investors these days, such as copper or lithium.
No, you know what, Sam? No, I reckon gold is very exciting, especially at the moment. So I'm very happy with Matador Mining looking for gold. But talk to me, because we're running out of time. Just briefly, I just want to know, what's the next few months' plans for you? And are you well enough funded?
Yeah, I mean, coming from a company that generates revenue, it's you've got the comfort of that cash flow coming in and ensuring that you're operating as efficiently as you can. Coming over to the world of junior exploration, you need to be funded to be able to do the good work that you'd like to do. And we've got good shareholders already that support the stock. We've, my Rolodex of investors is quite extensive as well. And if they see the potential here, which I believe they will, because again, we're in the right jurisdiction, we're sitting in the right structures, and I know the market is the market, and obviously right now there's a lot of uncertainty, but we're well funded for at least the next couple of quarters, and we'd be looking to utilize those funds to really be in a position to identify specific targets in the greenfields that we can then go back to the market with and say, this is the plan to drill these exciting targets like malachite, which I haven't even mentioned.
Because we are running out of time, and I did want you to just cover malachite really quickly if you could.
Yeah, so malachite is one of the greenfields targets. It's the first one. The team did a good job to be dispatched to do some soil samples. It's a big area. It's 15 kilometers by 4 kilometers. And that's an area that's larger than Marathon Gold's footprint that hosts at least the 5 million ounces they have.
Wow.
And we've done soil samples, and we've got 2/3 of those samples back, which we reported a couple of weeks ago. And a lot of the results were off the charts. There were at least 9 anomalies in this area. Again, it's a wide area. And one of it's gold grain analysis, which is a Canadian exploration technique to identify how much gold is in that sample of soil. But basically, it identified over 700 grains of gold, 716 grains of gold, to be precise. And that, according to the lab, who does this work not just for us but across Canada, that's one of the best soil anomalies they have ever seen in Canada. Full stop.
Across the whole of Canada. We're not just talking Newfoundland, we're talking across the whole of Canada.
Yeah, not just Newfoundland, but across Canada. So, and the good news, and I'm learning this, is that there's different types of gold grains. What you'd like to see is pristine, because it hasn't traveled far, which means you're close to the gold source. So that's an exciting target that we want to go back to as soon as possible, and that's the plan over the next couple of weeks, to go there, do some of the power auging that I mentioned to really define where the gold is, what the structures look like, so that then we can roll up the diamond drill rigs and do some economic drilling to basically find an elephant. And that's just one of the 9 anomalies from the 2/3 of the samples that we've received. And that's just one area in the 120-kilometer strike.
I'm just digesting all of that, Sam, because you said this is the best soil anomaly across the whole of Canada that this lab has ever seen. So, yeah, and it's only one of 9 that you're looking at. So plenty of work in that greenfields area coming up, so plenty of news flow for people to understand. Sam, I could continue talking to you for a long time because there's so much to cover with Matador Mining, but we've run out of time. Give me 3 reasons why you feel that our beautiful community out there need to really sit up and take notice of Matador Mining right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Number one, we're in Newfoundland, which is really, the way I look at it is that this is the final frontier for top jurisdictions that we know hosts multi-million ounces of gold and has the infrastructure, has the workforce, has the support of government to advance projects forward. And it's just approved Marathon Gold's development. So they're almost ready to go and start building their project. As I mentioned, they've approved this offshore oil field, production field. And so it's a government that is business friendly. And here we are with, and I'll give you my second reason, here we are with one of the largest land packages on an island, on the largest gold bearing structure, which already hosts multi-millions of ounces. So we're situated well in this final frontier of top jurisdictions with this extensive land package, as well as another project, which is quite exciting, called Hermitage. So we are well positioned here on the island. And the third reason, Carrie, is that the share price has been under some pressure over the last few months or so. And I believe we've got 840,000 ounces of higher grade shallow resource, which should underpin the market cap. And I believe on a relative basis, and what the brokers and analysts have told me, we are trading at a significant discount to our peers, just based on an EV to ounce perspective. So put aside all the greenfields potential, which we believe exists, put aside the till sampling program that we've gone through at Malachite, put aside the extensive land package that we have in this final frontier top jurisdiction. The stock is cheap just based on what we know already with the resource we've got in the ground that's been defined.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, Matador Mining. They are up there in Newfoundland. And I've learned a lot of things today that I didn't know about Newfoundland, that final frontier that Sam has got his hands, and the team, of course. A great team of operators up there, led by Ian Murray. As Sam said earlier, could this be a Gold Road 2.0? This is not financial advice. Do your own research. But they've got their hands on a very large tenement, and they're getting cracking with Sam at the helm. Sam Pazuki, great to have a chat with you today. Come back and let us know how that drilling goes out there in the greenfields, because 9 anomalies and you've only got your hands on one. Very exciting times. Thanks for joining me on Small Caps today.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Much appreciated.